where's the inflation coming from? Yes, there's supply chain problems. That's a huge part of it. And so, but when you turn on the media, it makes it sound like, oh, the Democrats are in charge and they're passing so many bills. But wait a minute, they actually haven't passed the bills yet. They only passed one bill so far. That was COVID relief. The number one thing that drove the inflation was the Fed printing so much money to give to corporations.
Yes, and banks.
And so the oversupply of money that the Fed printed in the beginning of the COVID crisis and just handed out to banks and giant corporations is what caused the inflation that you're seeing now. Now, that's a verifiable fact. You could check it with any economist, right? How often did you see that in mainstream media?
Barely.
I've seen it 0 times.
Because they kept getting asked about whether they're going to taper their so-called quantitative easing. That's the monetary policy that they're doing where they just provide liquidity to banks and corporations. And they didn't want to taper it, right? Because when you do taper it, it hits the stock market specifically. And they're like, no, this is just transitory. The inflation is transitory when it comes to certain sectors, right? When it comes to sectors that were harmed by the supply chain issue or by the labor shortage, but the housing crisis, that is not transitory because it's that cheap money provided by the Federal Reserve that poured into housing in the form of investments from banks and private equity firms that artificially drove up the prices of these homes, essentially pricing middle-class families out of the market. And that's not transitory.
Yeah, and in print, you will see it in some percentage of the articles in the 9th or 17th paragraph. They say, oh yes, well also they printed trillions of dollars in money. And of course that leads to inflation. And every day you turn on cable, CNN, MSNBC, et cetera, we're talking about the Fed should stop printing money. And why do they give trillions of dollars? Why do these bankers work for a living? Are they bums? Are they lazy? Why did they need all that extra money when they're the richest people on earth? How come you never hear that on cable news?